WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Vision Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the show is We Should Know. I want to thank Nicole for her continued introductions to our show. She does such a great job for us. Got an interesting show today for you. Thank you for listening in to our previous shows. We also appreciate you continuing to email us and giving us your thoughts. Also, you can like us, continue to like us on our Facebook at We Should Know. That's We Should Know EDU, and our Gmail address is We Should Know EDU at gmail.com. Send us your comments and continue to report to us things you want to hear from, things you want to hear us talk about, the experts you want us to get to the table. So hopefully you got some good information about Isaiah's last week from the man that wrote the book, Jim Darden. And we want to thank Jim for being with us and also being one of our sponsors. Today's show is back again to the issue of not just politics, but what's happening in Washington, what's happening in Congress, and none other than Mike McIntyre, a representative from the 7th District. Congressman McIntyre, you've got an interesting track record. Started in 1996, elected in 1996, re-elected just last year. Does these years go fast for you, Congressman, when you look at it? How is it kind of a blur or what?
Well, it never stops because you have to be very careful, and we are very conscientious of, I guess, the 3 Ps, you would say, keeping the political aspects separate from the professional aspects and doing the job that we need and want to do to help the people in the United States Congress, and keeping that. As you were asking me before the show about how do you have time personally just to go to the grocery store or to spend time with your family or go to church, and so we have to account for all those aspects, and we know that it's pervasive, another P word, in terms of the responsibilities of Congress, and we're grateful for that opportunity and grateful for the opportunity to serve the 7th District. You know, the face of the 7th has changed. It's been stretched out. We have most of eastern North Carolina now. And so we go, as we like to say, I guess alliteratively you could say, from Calabash to Clayton. That shows how far we are. The doorstep of the Atlantic and the South Carolina border, all the way to the doorstep of Raleigh now. So it's quite an expansive area. And up to Kinston, which is several folks in this area are very familiar with Kinston and Lenoir County as well. So, and all the way down to Rayford. So we are stretched, literally, we've been stretched to the southwest, to the northwest, and to the northeast in our district, in addition to southeastern North Carolina. But we have all of Sampson County. That's the good news. It was split up. I represented one part of Sampson. And I know before the show we were talking about a little bit of basic understanding of this representation. We had part of Sampson back in the late 1990s. Then we had the other part of Sampson during the early 2000s, and now we've got all of Sampson. So the good news is, despite all the other changing and tinkering that's been done with the lines, all of Sampson's together, and we're in the geographic heart of the district. In fact, just today I've had both my Business and Economic Advisory Committee meeting and my Medical and Healthcare Advisory Committee meeting here. We met, one of them was at Sampson Community College, the Business and Economic, and then the Medical Healthcare was at the hospital here, Sampson Regional. So we want to keep Sampson at the forefront, and folks may not realize this, but you know, I don't live in Washington. I live here in good old southeastern North Carolina, and I'm back and forth every week. In fact, virtually every weekend, I'm in 2 or 3 counties here in eastern North Carolina. This week, while we're out during a recess period, I'm in just about every county because we're traveling to different events. But this is a big day for us in Sampson County. We brought the district to Sampson today. We brought all of our business and economic leaders here, and we brought all of our medical, pharmaceutical, pharmacists, healthcare folks to come here today and showcase Sampson and meet in Sampson. Folks can reach us at our offices. We hope they will. We have offices scattered throughout the district, and also they can call Washington. But the main thing is accessibility, and I know you and I have talked about that.
Absolutely.
I'm home, like I said, just about every weekend of the year, and I'm traveling. I don't just sit at home. I do have time with my family, and we do things, obviously, together. But we also know that weekends are times that I've got to be at festivals, meetings, discussing issues, going to events that are important, meeting people out where they are on the farms or in their small business or at the schools, or we're having a big veterans meeting tomorrow, and I have a passion for helping veterans, as many people know. And so we're trying to be out there at the forefront of issues, not at the backside. So we're grateful for that opportunity. We invite your viewers to contact us. And I have field representatives that are literally out in the field too. We'll come to you if you can't get to us. In this day of Twitter and Facebook and email, if any of your viewers are involved in that, yes, we have accounts in every one of those categories. I hope people will get on our Facebook or follow us on Twitter or go to our website. But also, we know plenty of folks also just like to pick up the phone and call or have an opportunity to meet somebody. Either if I can or if I can't, somebody from my office. And we do that. And we do travel the district because we're committed to being here with the people. And a lot of people know this as well. I don't get tied up in the national or the partisan agendas. You hear that all the time on some other networks that come on nightly. My focus is trying to find a solution. And I think John Kennedy said it well once when he said, we shouldn't be about the Republican answer or the Democratic answer. We should be about finding the right answer. And we should be accountable and responsible for finding that answer. And that's why I've been blessed through the years to work with friends on both sides of the aisle. We have a center aisle caucus. A lot of people don't realize that. There is a remnant of us who do work from both sides of the aisle to try to find some common sense legislation. And, people are sick of the posturing and pushing people in corners because the logical extreme of that is when you get way over in one corner or another and then you don't have anybody that's willing to work together, you don't get anything done, and then people get frustrated. But traditionally, I've enjoyed working with folks from both sides of the aisle, and I don't get caught up in labels. I just try to work on issues back here at home. And I mean it, as you know, that my first and last question is always, how does this affect the people back home? How's it going to help our farmers or our rural hospitals? Or how's it going to help the schools or our beaches, our veterans, right on down the list? And, those aren't really partisan issues. Those are people issues. And in the House of Representatives, you asked me earlier before the show about we have 2 senators, of course. Every state has 2 senators, so that's based on statehood. But our opportunity in the House is based on population. We've got a growing state, a growing population. Eastern North Carolina is growing as well. And so we want to make sure we're back home talking with people and hearing their ideas. I like to say it's good to come over every weekend and get a good dose of common sense because, buddy, we need it up in Washington. And that's my commitment. And along that line, I know we want to talk about some issue areas, but let me just mention to your viewers at the outset, I know everybody may not be able to watch the entire show, but let me say something up front. We had the National Prayer Breakfast just last month. We've had it every year under every president since Eisenhower. A lot of people don't realize that. And every president has come every year. Now, that's amazing when you think about some of the presidents we've had since the 1950s. But we had 3,000 people from about 150 or more countries who came this year in February. Just, to come together, pray for wisdom, and ask for God's guidance. And I want to tell your viewers that if you can Google Congressional Prayer Caucus, or if you don't know quite how to do that, you're not familiar with the computer, maybe get your grandson or granddaughter to show you. But if you can just enter Congressional Prayer Caucus and see the site that comes up, there is a group of us that go across the hall every Monday night or Tuesday night, depending on the night we go into session. And right at that first vote at 6:30, it's during the supper hour. Maybe sometimes you're at home and you're watching the national news, but you could flip to C-SPAN and you'll think, well, they're just doing a procedural vote. Well, during that procedural vote, there's a window of time when there's no other meetings going on that a group of us step across the hall, like Solomon in the Old Testament, just to ask God for wisdom, that we will make the right decision. And if folks here in Sampson County or in your viewing area would like to say, yeah, Mike, you better believe I want you guys to make the right decision, if you would join us in saying, you know what, it is important enough, I will pray for our country. I'll pray for you guys, and I'll pray for our state and our local leaders, because there are decisions made at every level that we need wisdom. And we're in serious times now, as we know, in this country. And hope people will go to that website, Congressional Prayer Caucus, and there's a way, like Nehemiah built the wall in the Old Testament, we want to build a wall of prayer around our nation's capital. We ask folks to say, will you take 5 minutes a week and put a brick or a stone, if you will, in that wall of prayer? And you can choose the time. And we've had churches, and we've had prayer groups, we've had fellowship groups, Bible studies, youth groups, men's fellowship, women's circles, other groups, even businesses and families just say, you know what, it is that serious. I will pray for you. That should be our first resort, not our last resort. And that's why we meet the first of the week. And it's been a blessing. And the National Day of Prayer is coming up the first Thursday in May. A lot of communities have that on an interdenominational or non-denominational basis. And we're excited about that because that first Thursday in May, usually the celebrations or the commemorations are held around lunchtime, but people have different times of day. But it's a great time for our nation and communities around the nation. We'll be having opportunities not just in Washington but around the country, and I'll be in fact at one or two here in the district, to come together and pray God's blessings upon our country. And to me, that's the most important message I can share today, is that we, one nation under God, we pray for that wisdom because these are serious times, and we pray for our country and pray that the right decisions will be made.
Well, Congressman, when you think about that, it's kind of the secular world as it is now. It's not often you get, especially a politician, to be able to say that they do pray and they, extend prayer. It's almost as though people don't want to talk about that anymore. So,
or they don't realize it.
Or they don't realize it. And the consciousness of that is that you're saying to folks there's a way they can connect with you and what you're doing as you represent them in the Congress of the United States. A huge, powerful message.
Well, it's a way that transcends politics, because I think people got sick of the political ads and the other messaging that was truncated or not quite reported accurately sometimes during the campaign season. But we're beyond that now. I mean, we've got to make sure we're about the business of our country, and we're working with all people from all political backgrounds and interests. And that's always been a commitment of mine. And let me just say this on this segment, that and I shared it at the National Day of Prayer when I was asked to speak there on behalf of the legislative branch, but the true source of power is not found in the halls of Congress, and it's not found in the Oval Office of the West Wing, and it's not found in the chambers of the Supreme Court, but it's found on our knees before the throne of grace and asking Almighty God for wisdom.
I think it's a great way to start the show today, and again, I'm thanking you again for being here as we go to our first break. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Congressman Mike McIntyre, the 7th District, right here in North Carolina. We want you to stay with us. Call a friend, a family member. Tell them to tune in. Channel 16 Star Vision, WCLN 1170 AM radio. We'll be back in a moment with Congressman Mike McIntyre. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Name of the show is We Should Know, WCLN 1170 AM radio, Star Vision Channel 16, Tuesdays 2:30 to 3:30. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 p.m. replay of the program. You can tune in on Channel 16. There's also a summation in the Samson Weekly newspaper. You can read the summation. Also, if you'll now give us a couple of days after the first show, Tuesday, it'll be on YouTube. So you can just go to YouTube, type in We Should Know, EDU. No matter where you're at, you can see the show and the results of what we talked about. Also, it is live, as we call it, live at 2:30 to 3:30 on Tuesday. Oldies1170.com. It streams, so you can go there and listen to the show if you're driving down the road. Here in Nebraska, wherever you're listening, you can listen there. Technology, Congressman McIntyre, is the way that we get things done today. One of the things I wanted to kind of get into today was you're co-chairing a committee up there, and it basically focuses on rural folks. And there's 85 counties in North Carolina that are considered rural counties.
Yep, exactly
and out of those counties, there's a significant number of concerns. Agriculture is just one of those. And you mentioned a couple a while ago. One of those is health care and rural hospitals, how they survive. Our community colleges are represented in a lot of those rural areas. Talk to us about how important it is for you to be involved in that, and how it's important for us to understand that we can contact you and give you some message or issues that we're concerned about.
Well, I appreciate that. And for your viewers, we clearly know Sampson County is considered rural county. That goes without saying. But it's interesting that throughout our congressional district in eastern North Carolina, all of the counties are considered rural except New Hanover, down where Wilmington is. We all know the explosive growth down there. But what that means is that we have to have an emphasis to stand up for our rural areas, because otherwise the agendas in Washington get gobbled up by the urban and suburban areas. And what I mean by that is, we were talking earlier about the way representation is done in the U.S. House is based on population. Well, by definition, you've got higher concentrations of population in urban and suburban areas. So that means those of us in rural areas got to stick together, because you know something? Unfortunately, April 15th is coming, and we're going to be reminded too quickly about our tax dollars or where are they going. And rural areas can get outvoted in a hurry if we don't band together. So what's great about it is we do have a rural caucus on Capitol Hill, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity to co-chair that. And we work in bipartisan ways, so it's not one party or the other. It's our banding together from rural areas, working together, whatever party or background someone may have. And as you indicated, a lot of folks don't realize that in our rural areas and in the Farm Bill, it's about making sure that we're looking out for not only agricultural interests, but also the interests of small town America, of the rural crossroads and communities, rural hospitals, small business, our law enforcement and firefighters and EMS units. Those are a passion of mine, and many people know that, helping law enforcement and our firefighters and our EMS units. And they're the ones that answer the phone when you dial 911 in a rural area, even if it's a chemical spill or if it's a major shipment coming out of the Wilmington port, or going to one of our major interstates. It's going to be the local sheriff's department or volunteer fire department in many cases when we call it out when there's a serious situation. And that's why they need our help as well, because there may not be the tax base to support it. And we welcome our fire departments and law enforcement units and EMS units to contact us when there are opportunities to work on those kind of firefighter assistance grants, because we ought to see some of our taxpayer money come back and help our areas, especially when those responsibilities are not limited to our areas, but are expanded by having major interstates or a major port or airports in our region that serve more than just our county, yet we have that responsibility. Let me mention that I touched on the Farm Bill. You know, a lot of folks say, well, that's nice, we need to do right by our farmers. Clearly we do. But many people don't realize the Farm Bill is much more expansive, and that ties into our discussion about rural areas. As you mentioned, 85 of the 100 counties in North Carolina are considered rural. As I said, all of the counties in our district are, except for New Hanover. And when we talk about serving the rural areas, economic development, all of the USDA rural development programs, and we have been blessed. The 7th District has some of the most expansive and involved USDA rural development programs of any districts in North Carolina. And having served as the chairman of that subcommittee on rural development, and I currently do serve on that committee still, when you talk about rural development, the number one issue I hear from our county commissioners is on water and sewer. People think that's in the Farm Bill, but yes, you can't bring industry and jobs and business and health clinics and build better schools if you can't get in the clean water and get rid of the dirty water. It's that basic. And so water and sewer are big under USDA rural development. And then, as I mentioned, you got to have law enforcement. You want to bring down insurance rates and entice business to come, you got to make sure you got the fire services. And so helping our fire departments is critical. Also in rural economic development, small business, rural business loans, working with our rural hospitals to make sure they survive and that people have access to that type of health care locally. And, of course, looking at the larger business opportunities as we work with community colleges and small business incubators and worker training and retraining. There are a host of things in community facilities that all, including our rural telephones and our rural electric co-ops, and we appreciate Star Telephone helping host us today, all that comes under the Farm Bill and under the House Agriculture Committee. And that's why working on the U.S. House Agriculture Committee is a great privilege and honor, because to me it shows direct impact on what we do. And a lot of listeners may not realize this, but agriculture and agri-related business are still the number one employers in North Carolina. Almost 1 out of every 5 persons are employed either in agriculture or agri-related business. So even since colonial times, agriculture still is the number one industry in North Carolina. 2 of the other top industries that tie in, I want to mention because I don't know how much time will permit us today, but they're right here in Eastern North Carolina too. Our military bases, as you know, I serve on the Armed Services Committee. And with the 5 military bases we have in Eastern North Carolina, some in my district, some are on the edge of my district, and some not. But being on the Armed Services Committee, we're going to look out for all of them anyway, not only in North Carolina, but obviously nationally. But in North Carolina, the economic ripple effect of those bases, not only in doing right by our men and women in uniform, but seeing the economic effect as Camp Lejeune, or Lejeune as they say now, and Fort Bragg, the tremendous growth both of those bases are experiencing on either end of the district, the new wharf and the growth and emphasis on our military munitions down at Sunny Point, down near at the mouth of the Cape Fear River. A lot of people don't realize we also have that on the edge of our district, right in the corner of Brunswick County, that we're in a position to make a huge difference, not only for our men and women in uniform, but for the economy of our region. And our military bases have helped that economy stay strong. And then tourism. You know, we're right around the Easter time now, and that's the kind of the official beginning of tourism season down at our coast. And all those folks that travel through the rural areas going to our coast, that's affecting business up and down the highways everywhere. And we realize that tourism has helped keep us afloat literally in this part of North Carolina, and has to be an industry that we continue to emphasize. I wanted to mention too on the Farm Bill before we leave agriculture that we had a Farm Bill ready to go last fall. We had Republican and Democratic support, and unfortunately because it was a national election year, it was not allowed to come to the floor, and we were very frustrated by that. And there were many Republican and Democratic members of Congress that worked together to try to bring it to the floor, and we were told no and not allowed to because they didn't want anybody taking credit for it with it being a national election. That was extremely frustrating. We are now in a position with the new year to push the Farm Bill. I've already written the Speaker of the House encouraging him to please let's get it scheduled, let's bring it to the floor. It's that important to rural America. And you know something I mentioned about April 15th coming? We're as much taxpayers as the people that live in big urban areas and suburban areas. And rural economic development and agriculture, this 7th district is the top agricultural producing district in North Carolina. We want to make sure that we're not left out, and we want to see that Farm Bill get to the floor and get done.
Well, certainly all these issues are critically important. I want to transition a bit here and talk about a number of folks that are serve in political office have sat in that chair you're in, including Governor Pat McCrory, Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, Senator Brent Jackson here in North Carolina, Representative Larry Bell, Representative William Brisson. Mm-hmm. All of these folks I believe to be devout Christian thinking people. When we hear a lot of clamor in Washington, D.C. about folks not being able to come together, Congressman, what causes that sense of not being on things that seem so simple to us here in eastern North Carolina that a decision could be made? Because all of these folks share a lot of the same principles you do, pray like you do. There just seems to be something that blocks that. What do you think causes that?
Well, I think it's heightened when you have a national election like we did last fall, because then people tend to try to identify, or being told they must identify by other powers that be, with certain partisan interest. And that means political interests that quite honestly don't lead to an opportunity to work together. And for those of us who try to work with both sides of the aisle, it makes it tough, because people like to paint you in a corner and say, oh, you must be like him or her if you do this or don't do that, rather than saying, you know what, let's just find the right answer, like I referred to what President Kennedy once said. Mm-hmm. Or let's work together, like I mentioned the Center Aisle Caucus, if your viewers early in the show didn't hear that. A caucus most people don't even know exists, but that groups of us on both sides of the aisle, there is a remnant of us that do work together and try to say, let's look at legislation based on its own merit, whether it's a worthwhile piece of legislation to help people back home, rather than, oh, that's going to advance this party or that party's agenda, or this is going to advance his or her candidacy, rather than, is it the right thing to do? Is this the time to do it? Timing is everything, in politics, like it is in a lot of decisions in life. Timing is critical. And, when the time is right, we need to move forward. Just like the Farm Bill I mentioned a minute ago, that doesn't need to be, most people want to eat and they want to be safe. And I am grateful to the people back home and to the good Lord, I have an opportunity to be on those two committees, agriculture and armed services, because they're important to eastern North Carolina, but also those don't need to be partisan issues. When you go in the hospital to get help, you don't look at the doctor and say, now, wait a minute now, are you a Democrat or Republican? Or when you go to the grocery store, wait a minute, was that fruit grown by a Democrat or Republican? Or when you've got our military defending us, it's not, are you Democrat or Republican soldiers or Marines? That's ridiculous. And that's the kind of attitude we want to make sure we have, is that we're about the country's business, and the political season's over, and through the prayer caucus, through Center Aisle Caucus, and through folks that are willing to work together, that's the way we can start finding solutions.
We're going to take another break. We're going to come back in a moment and talk about some of the key issues facing the country and some of the key issues and the thoughts from the Congressman on those issues. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. If you're just tuning us in or you're driving down the road on WCLN 1170 AM, we're talking with Congressman Mike McIntyre, Channel 16 Star Vision TV. We're talking with the Congressman about issues facing us today. Congressman, thank you for being here. We were just chatting off the air, and I want to particularly thank you as being one of the only national level folks that we've been able to get in that seat. I mentioned some of the folks that we've had from the state, and a lot of good folks have been there and tried to help us better understand what's going on with the world of bureaucracy and government, which seems to overwhelm everybody. Some of the big ticket issues now that's buzzing around, and I know folks want to know what your sense is and your feeling on it, and I know we can't get into a huge amount of depth, but I at least want to give you more than just a soundbite. But one of those issues is dealing with same-sex marriage. You know as well as I do, right now that's a big issue facing folks, and we've even seen in media here where we've read where folks have changed their mind about this. They're following national trends. Talk to us about that and what you see from your perspective in this whole issue. I know part of it is just a legal matter. They want to be included as far as the legal agenda. North Carolina has voted. We have made a decision through the democratic process. But I think I would like to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I've always supported the Defense of Marriage Act, and which is that marriage is between a man and a woman. Continue to support that position strongly, and to me, that's the straightforward answer. The Supreme Court obviously is going to be hearing and
Proposition 8.
And then making some decisions. But you're right, our state had an opportunity to vote about that issue with regard to state law, and most people don't realize that most of those laws involving marriage and the family, until you get into interstate issues about child custody and all, most of those laws are decided on the state level. But from the federal perspective, yes, I have always supported the Defense of Marriage Act and believe marriage is between a man and a woman.
Going to another big ticket item, big issue now. Mayor Michael Bloomberg, I understand, is in excess of $10 million he's spending on gun control issue. And when I say gun control issue, I want to be as fair as I can in my comments and my question to you. One of the things that is being done now, there's a huge amount of advertising nationally that is being done, and some of these ads, some folks have probably already seen them on TV. I think they started Monday, which portrays folks that appear to be, could be rural eastern North Carolina folks. I mean, they look like a lot of my neighbors, and sometimes might look like me, but a person standing there with a gun, maybe about to go hunting or what have you, but they're portraying that we need tighter controls on certain aspects of guns in our country. Tell us where Congressman McIntyre stands on this very pivotal and volatile issue. I mean, it's a huge button, especially in this area, and of course you know that.
Oh yes, well, my record's been clear on this also, just as I mentioned a moment ago, and I meant to say the pro-family and pro-life groups, I've always had a top rating with them because of my pro-family and pro-life position, and that's well known. And I've worked with Dr. Dobson's Family Research Council and Focus on the Family Group, and I've worked with Concerned Women for America, which Beverly LaHaye has been involved in, and Tim LaHaye, he's written a great series of Christian novels, the Left Behind series that some of your viewers may be familiar with, or your listeners. And the same is true on the gun issue. I've always been a strong proponent of the Second Amendment, and feel very strongly that the right to bear arms is a basic American tenet and is obviously critical and is right there in our Bill of Rights, and as a strong proponent of the Second Amendment, I've always had a very high and strong rating with regard to protecting that right, and continue to feel that way. The issue really, we do have issues with mental health that need to be addressed. We do have issues of protecting our children in our schools. Some schools have taken extra security measures with regard to cameras and access and control access to make sure strangers aren't just walking into a back hallway or in the main hallway. But those are practical issues that local school boards are in a better position to make decisions about. And but in terms of this other, I've always felt strongly that we protect our Second Amendment rights.
And I think the big issue is that's being marketed now is the background checks. That's the big issue, and obviously the debate will go on with this. Right. Do you see that moving to any kind of passage either in the Senate or the House as it relates to background checks?
Well, it's going to depend on the language. I think right now, for those of us who are strong proponents of protecting our Second Amendment rights, we're going to look very carefully at any change in language, because we realize that there might be more blatant discussion, but there might be also background discussion. And we want to make sure that anything that comes up is scrutinized carefully. And the bottom line is there are a lot of ideas out there, but there are not a lot of bills on the floor. So I don't want to preempt discussion on any bill by saying this will happen or that won't happen, because quite honestly, unless it comes to the floor, we're not going to be voting on anything or any change. And even in the Senate, they're having an issue right now about whether to bring anything to the floor. I feel like in the House, in the U.S. House, that you're going to see a strong movement. Actually, there's going to be folks on both sides of the aisle that are going to stand strong to protect our Second Amendment rights.
Okay, moving quickly. Immigration, big issue. Some change again in people's thinking on immigration, what that means. I know back in September 2012, I could read a couple of statements, and I'm not going to get into that you made that kind of laid out your plan, but I want to get you to kind of tell us now, where do you stand now on immigration? Has it changed any?
No, my views on that have not changed. I'll tell you something. We have been blessed through the years in this office that we have worked with folks who have gone about it the right way and have followed the law and wanted to become American citizens. And you know, they have done the right things for their green card or the right things to become an American citizen. To then suddenly turn around and now allow folks who did not do it right to jump to the front of the line or to skip the process. You know, we're a land that follows the law, the rule of law, and it's not fair to suddenly allow other folks who did not come to this country properly and who do not follow the law to suddenly allow folks who came in an illegal way to suddenly say, hey, that's okay. That's not fair to all the people who have done it the right way and who did go through the proper procedure. We are a nation, I believe, that should always follow the rule of law, and that gets beyond personalities and the emotions. Now, I know in the agricultural area there is an issue about seasonal workers, and we are sensitive to that, and there's a right way to do that. And there's some things that need to be changed there. You know, one thing is I know our farmers are very frustrated, especially those involved in, right now we're in blueberry and strawberry season coming up. We need to get those out of the field as those times come up. Our office was just dealing the other day with an issue about some of the seasonal workers to help get our blueberries out of the fields. And that's serious, and that needs to be done in a way that is practical, and we don't need the Department of Labor coming in and just harassing our farmers who are following the law and trying to do it the right way. I've been a proponent of moving that regulatory responsibility to USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, rather than the U.S. Department of Labor, because we got to have people that understand agriculture and that understand how to deal properly with seasonal workers so that it is done the right way, and we don't unnecessarily penalize or harass our farmers who need to get their crops out of the field.
Well, from what I've read, I don't hear any change in your tenor from last year as this year, so it sounds as though you're pretty much on track.
Let me just say one other thing. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill also to make sure that that there's verification of Social Security numbers with a physical address and with the physical identity of folks, and to strengthen our borders. In fact, I went down to the Tucson sector, Tucson, Arizona. I went and I saw the wall that we've been building and I actually witnessed while I was there on the patrol with our Border Patrol folks who were illegally crossing. And we actually had to stop, and they had to get out and take law enforcement action right on the spot. So I've actually personally witnessed that. And that's serious, and I'm a strong proponent of strengthening our Border Patrol and protection. That's a matter of national security.
Got to close the door to the barn, or the horses don't keep getting out. It's kind of a common sense thing. The other thing I want to hit, another big bullet item, and again, try to give you a little more than a sound bite. National health care. A lot of attention still to national health care. You know, this bill has been moving forward. I mean, it's already passed. It's in place. Actions is being taken. We're hearing all kinds of information about the bureaucracy involvement in it now is just unbelievable. And it's gone from some thousand numbers of pages now to tens of thousands of pages that has been built up on bureaucracy. What's your sense of national health care, and what does that say to us? What do we need to know about that?
Well, we talked about rural issues earlier and protecting rural areas, and I mentioned that I actually had our Medical and Health Advisory Committee, which is a cross-section of healthcare representatives from local hospitals, from medical practices, from pharmacists to others who serve like chiropractors and optometrists and in other ways that affect healthcare, and home healthcare and hospice. We have a cross-section of people that serve on our Health Advisory Board that I work with here in the 7th District. And as you know, and so your listeners are clear on this, every time I have voted against the Obamacare plan. So there's no mistake about that. I voted against it from the beginning, and I voted against it since it passed to make sure that this was not the solution. And the reason is our local health advisory board, they saw it coming and we discussed it, and it was not going to have the kind of effect that in our area that was going to be positive, and it's tough. And I'll say this, on the business side, just this past Friday in Wilmington, National Federation of Independent Business, who I work with, they're the largest voice in America for small business. They're trying to get rid of what's called the HIT tax, the health insurance tax on small business. I mean, here we are trying to increase employment in North Carolina and trying to help small business succeed, which is another passion of mine. I have a full-time business and economic director on my staff just for that reason. And yet, they can't provide, be successful in business, provide the jobs, and take care of their employees if they're getting hit with additional taxes. And tax reform is another issue. But on this health insurance tax, it's a big problem. I've also been a co-sponsor to get rid of this Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is a group of unelected officials trying to oversee what is being done for health care delivery. And as one of the people on our Health Advisory Committee said today, that's another reason that concerns the medical community, is you got another group of bureaucrats trying to just be technocrats on regulations, which inhibits the ultimate concern we have, is just making sure people got access to health care. So working with our rural hospitals, I actually have been co-chair of the Rural Health Care Coalition, again a nonpartisan or bipartisan group, to make sure that we're doing the right things to help folks who need help on Medicare and Medicaid, but also to make sure that we're doing right by our small businesses and doing the kinds of things on a practical level that help our hospitals and help our health clinics succeed.
We're going to go to break. We'll be back in a moment, Congress. We're talking with Congressman Mike McIntyre. Stay with us. Thank you, folks, for watching today. It's called We Should Know, or listening to We Should Know, WCLN 1170 AM, Star Vision TV, summation of the Sampson Weekly newspaper. Like us on Facebook at We Should Know. We're talking with Congressman Mike McIntyre. Congressman, thank you for being so forthcoming and covering a number of topics today. I feel like I've kind of peppered you with a number of things that we could have talked about for hours, but at least folks have kind of got your sense on it, your feel for it, where you're coming from. A couple of other issues that we want to talk about before we get there, though, to talk about jobs and regulations and that kind of thing. The big issue that folks are also talking about, not only here but all over the country, is the debt issue. $16+ trillion in debt. You hear folks on a regular basis going, well, how long is it going to be before China buys us out, or have they already bought us out? It's a real huge concern. Give us your thoughts on where we're at, what we may or may not be doing, and what we should be doing.
Well, one thing is there's no doubt that government needs to be responsible, like you and I have to do personally and with our families, like our friends who run small businesses have to do. Anybody in business or industry understands it. Families get that, whether it's the family farm or the family business, or whether you work in a business or industrial setting. You got to balance the checkbook. You got to make sure that you're being responsible, and you can't personally just go run up debt. And it frustrates me that too often on the national level we see folks in the national government who have an endless credit card, and you and I can't do that. You reach a limit and you max out, and that's why I've been very concerned about paying down the national debt. You're right. There's a price tag on the head of every man, woman, and child in America of debt that our country owes that is just beyond belief in terms of the mounting debt. And I've always been a proponent of paying down the national debt. I've been a proponent of a balanced budget amendment, not just Balanced Budget Act by statute, but an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which we don't have. Some people don't realize that. Nearly every state in this country has, on their state constitution, including North Carolina, a balanced budget requirement. But the national government doesn't, and that's been part of the problem. And so I have long been a proponent of a balanced budget amendment that would require us to have a balanced budget, not just talk about it. That, for sure, would be a way to help cut down on this never-ending debt cycle and this debt problem. Obviously, I've said let every agency in government prove its worth and its merit, and let's sunset agencies that are not doing their job or that are duplication in job. We talked about the Farm Bill earlier in the program in rural areas. The Farm Bill that we proposed that had both Democratic and Republican support and that we want to get to the floor, we actually went through in a bipartisan way and looked at ways to save money in the agriculture bill, because we didn't want somebody from labor or from some other area that doesn't understand agriculture coming in and saying, all right, you need to cut this and this and this, because unfortunately, agriculture has been a whipping boy by a lot of groups who don't understand agriculture, yet the entire agricultural budget for our country hovers around right at less than 0.5%, and yet we feed the entire nation, and we're the breadbasket of the world. And so, that's where responsibility begins. We determined that in our own committee in agriculture. Let's be responsible. It's not our money. It's not Washington's money. It's the taxpayer money. And that's the perspective that we have to have. And that leads to the broader discussion on the budget and on jobs. That's where we've got to make sure as we work, and I mentioned as we work toward a balanced budget, as I hope we get a balanced budget amendment passed, and as we take scrutiny and we put every single government program under scrutiny to prove its own merit. With regard to jobs and the economy, because I know our programs will be coming to a close soon, our office is working on a 5-point plan to deal with jobs and the economy, and I'll summarize those, and then I want to mention a big economic summit we're having. I want to invite your viewers to come to and let us hear their ideas. But first of all, we want to help small business, and in doing that, the two biggest things I hear from small business is we need more access to capital, and we're working with a lot of our community banks and our mid-sized banks that serve eastern North Carolina to make sure. Bank regulators are now way over the top in terms of putting a chilling effect on business investment, job expansion, job growth, and our local bankers that we know who have these regulators hovering over them, and it's just chilling the entire effect in local economies and small towns and rural areas. Also making sure that the regulations are not as onerous. That's the other part of helping small business and in lessening those unnecessary government regulations. Another big area, second area, is speeding up the time permitting process. We see too many permits lingering forever. A lot of them are state agencies, and of course we work on the federal level, but there are some federal agencies that do that too, that we need to speed that up. And I spend a lot of time on the phone with EPA and with USDA and with other government agencies that too often slow down, Department of Labor and other groups or divisions within those departments. The third area is retraining our workers and working with our community colleges. We have great success with and my hat's off to our small business and centers and our business and technology centers that our community colleges have. I spend a lot of time at community colleges, and we want to work with them to help those workers who may have been displaced when we lost our textile industry here in this part of the state. But we also want to get our manufacturing base back to America. And we do that by closing these tax loopholes that companies are taking to ship jobs overseas. We entice them to come back. We have a series called JW called the Make It in America. We all like to read Made in USA or Made in America. We call it Make It in America. It's a series of initiatives to give tax incentives to businesses to stay here and to expand here rather than going overseas. Another area in our plan is reduce and reform taxes. We all know we need a simpler tax code with April 15th coming. It's too onerous, it's too expensive for families and individuals, not to mention small business or large business. And reforming our tax code is critical. I have long supported repealing the death or the estate tax. It's an unfair penalty at a tough time in a family's life. Also, eliminating the marriage penalty, that married couples tend to have to pay more than individuals, and also cutting taxes on IRAs to promote savings and investment. So that's a quick run through, and I said I wanted to tell you, we are having a business and economic summit. And it's called Taking Care of Business. That may sound familiar, especially to your radio listeners, of a song from a few years ago. But we want to take care of business. Now, this is not a new thing for us. Our office spearheads it, but we used to have 2 other congressmen that worked with us on it. Now we have 9 congressmen and women, Republican and Democrat, primarily Eastern North Carolina, but we got some from Central North Carolina. This event will be September 9th and 10th. That is the Monday of the week after Labor Day. So it's the second Monday in September and that Tuesday. And there's no charge. It's a pretty good deal. We've had everybody, and we talk about business, the business environment, regulations, tax code, all these things I've just mentioned. We've had everybody from Jesse Helms to Hillary Clinton, from John Kerry to John McCain. And we could list a lot of other people on either end of the spectrum or in between, but it's no holds barred. We want everybody to come, and we want to hear these, instead of just watching MSNBC or CNN or Fox News, come talk to us. And if people are upset or concerned about taxes or business regulation or banking regulations or these other things I've talked about, come on. This is a chance to meet with folks, Republicans, Democrats, people who lead committees on the Senate and the House side, people from the administration, people from the Pentagon. We always have a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because of the big economic impact our military bases have in eastern North Carolina. We are excited. It's a great event. We usually have about 250 business and civic leaders, primarily from our district because we head it up, but folks from other adjoining districts as well. And your local Chamber of Commerce has information on it, but call my office. I'm inviting you. You don't have to go through your chamber if you're not a member or you don't know somebody there. You can call our office and we'll give you details. You can go to our website.
Okay, and that's coming up. Where's the location?
September 9th and 10th. It'll be in Washington.
Washington.
As long as you can get away to Washington and find somewhere to stay, there's no charge for the event itself.
Okay. Well, and will it be like a hotel or?
No. It's right there on Capitol Hill. It's right there in the Capitol Visitor Center. That was just still pretty new. It just opened. The Capitol Visitor Center, of course, is the underground complex now, following the tragic shooting of Capitol police officers a few years ago. But it's where all visitors have to now go through to be screened for safety purposes. But we use the auditorium that we pray would never happen, but if we had another 9/11, it's the underground auditorium that Congress would use to meet. And we just met there the other day with the President to talk about budget issues. And as I sat there, I thought about that, that this is that facility. So the experience is a great one for people to come up and be in that Capitol Visitor Center, to be underground. And then to have these top national policymakers come and talk about the policies that affect your business and your lifestyle and the success of your family doing well on economic and business issues.
Well, there he is, folks. You have an invitation from Congressman McIntyre. That's September 9th and 10th. They can call your office, go to your website, and
or talk to
make
your local
contact,
chamber.
or Chamber of Commerce, and there might be a delegation coming from Eastern North Carolina you could connect with, and I don't know, I'm just assuming there may be bus trips, that kind of thing. So, September 9th and 10th, go ahead and put it on your calendar. Again, I want to thank you for coming in. We're kind of down to the last few seconds, so I want to give you time to kind of wrap up anything that we may have missed that you want to touch on right quick.
Sure. Well, I mentioned earlier about my passion for helping veterans, and as a senior member also of the Armed Services Committee, let me just not only thank families who are supporting their loved ones who currently serve in our military, but also those who have served. We are excited coming up on Tuesday, April 30th. I want to invite your listeners to come because Sampson County will be affected by this. We're going to be opening the Super Regional Clinic for veterans. It's been a long-time dream of mine and our Military and Veterans Advisory Committee. We'll have medical specialists there. We'll have a full-service VA pharmacy. We've never had that down in this further eastern part of North Carolina. And it's out at the Wilmington Airport, so you can find it. Come on April 30th at 11 o'clock. It'll be a major event to open that Super Regional Veterans Clinic. And if you have issues with the federal government, our local staff is available. If you've got issues going on, whether it's a veterans claim, Social Security claim, issues with the IRS, which is interesting this time of year given what tax season it is. But we want to be there to help. And I also want to mention again about asking folks to pray for us, that we make the right decisions. I want to thank folks here in Sampson County. There's not a more hospitable group of folks. We spent a lot of time today dealing with a lot of issues here in Sampson County. And like I said, it's at the geographic center here. And I think it's a microcosm of the 7th District with a lot of the issues that are going on, whether it's in education or at the local hospital and health care or small business or out on the farm.
Congressman McIntyre, again, thank you for coming today. We've had a good discussion. I just hope we had more time to spend more in-depth look at it, but hopefully we got more than a soundbite in.
Yes,
and again, thank you for being one of the national folks that comes in and sits down and talks to us. I appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching We Should Know. We encourage you to stay with us next week. We'll see you again next week on the radio.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question or comment regarding this or any episode, please send your email questions and or comments to jwsimmonsedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday afternoon beginning at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.